I began my journey with Don Francisco 2 decades ago in Morocco. 13 years had passed since the Battle of Toro, and the grizzled soldier had risen to be an esteemed counselor to King Juan. Courtly life did not suit my captain well, however. He convinced the king to send him to Africa to fight the Moors. King Alfonso had conquered the Tangier coast before the war with Aragon, but Portugal's hold on Muslim Africa was tenuous. Barbary pirates menaced the coast, and Berber tribesmen emerged from the lifeless deserts in fierce raids. Against these predators stood a fragile outpost of Christendom on an island in the Lucos River. The garrison was led by a soldier named Afonso de Albuquerque, whose path would cross with ours again in a different world. My captain set sail to take command of this garrison and re-establish Portugal's hold on Tangier. It would not be the last time that Don Francisco carried the flag of Portugal to the dangerous edges of the Christian world. While we fought the centuries-old war against the Moors in North Africa, other sons of Portugal were the pioneers of a new age. On small, leaky caravels, they took the first daring steps from Europe and lifted the shroud that had obscured our understanding of the wider world for a millennium. The world was vast. Far vaster than we had ever imagined. But men like Bartolomeo Diaz and Vasco da Gama reached distant shores and gave us the first glimmers of a coming global empire. The Turks and Moors might flash their scimitars over the Mediterranean, but they wore no armor on their backs. There, in the Indian Ocean, an ancient trade flourished to the enrichment of the Muslim world. Armed with cannons and ships built to withstand the storms of the Atlantic, the sons of Portugal fall upon this world like a famished lion in the fold. It was 5 years ago that I went with Don Francisco to the Indies. His appointment to the viceroyship of India by the young King Manuel had shocked the Portuguese court. Don Francisco was the champion of King Juan, the deceased cousin of the recently crowned king, and the Almeidas had favored a rival claimant to the Portuguese throne. The king's intentions were the topic of many hushed whispers. We sailed for many months across the edge of the world, preyed upon by pirates, storms, and disease. But as our leaky ships rounded the southern cape of Africa, we saw the first glimmers of the riches of the Orient. 3 mighty citadels guarded the lucrative trade waters of the Swahili coast, where merchants traded ivory, gold, spices and jewels from the innards of Africa to the fringes of faraway China. Weathered by the long voyage, Don Francisco sought trade and hospitality from the first of these citadels. But her stubborn ruler, a usurper who had slain the rightful sultan, arrogantly closed his gates to us. Finding an exiled African prince with ties to a rebel army, my captain cunningly hatched a plan to take the Swahili coast by fire and steel. Empires are built on the ruins of dead empires. The pile of burnt stone we left in Mombasa, once a palace, was the foundation of the new empire of Portugal. Our conquest of the Swahili coast sent waves across the Indian Ocean to the wealthy trading cities of Zanzibar, Mogadishu, Calicut, and others. We were met with either fearful gifts or the closed gates of those with the foolishness to challenge our cannons. Few would continue to make that mistake. After months at sea, we reached our goal, the rich Malabar coast of India, land of 1,000 gods, and a haven for spices, gold, and silver. In the brackish lagoons of Kerala, among temples dedicated to strange serpent gods, we established our trading posts in the cities of Kannur and Cochin. From these cities, my captain and his son Lorenzo cunningly manipulated the feuding Rajas and Sultans. They maneuvered through the politics of spice and faith, always with an eye for the most profitable outcome. One Hindu prince, however, defied us. This nameless ruler of Calicut, known only by the title the Zamorin, threatened to break the carefully crafted deals and rivalries from which Portugal profited. My sword and shrewd tongue, giving no credence to differences of religion or race, he gained allies in the Rajas, in the Sultans, and in rulers as far away as Egypt and Venice. Even our allies among the Indians fell for his intrigue. The treacherous Kolathiri Raja, Prince of Kannur, betrayed us for the Zamorin's gold. Surrounded by enemies, it seemed that the hands of fate had turned so quickly against us. Though the Zamorin limped away from Kannur bloodied, his resolve was untouched by our cannon. In driving men to war, gold can be more powerful than God. For centuries, the wealth of the Indies had passed through the Indian Ocean, carried by Arab, Indian, and Somali merchants to the port cities of Arabia, Egypt, and Africa. From there, endless caravans carried wealth across the desert to Alexandria, and then to Istanbul, Venice, and Genoa. By rounding Africa, Portuguese traders had upset the traditional balance of this world. With our forts in India, we cut the trade that had enriched the Muslim sultans and Venetian doge alike. Don Francisco held a knife to the throats of our enemies, and as the lion fed, vultures and jackals appeared. We had taken the other side of the world by storm, but our old enemies followed. As the Zamorin beat his war drums, Ottomans and Egyptians rallied to him. Their ships were carried over the desert and rebuilt by treacherous Venetians. In India, an unlikely Russian renegade called Malik Ayaz raised the Muslim armies of Gujarat in defense of the Hindu Zamorin. Gold had truly become more powerful than God. As this coalition of Hindus, Muslims, and Christians descended on us, liars and jackals flocked to the court of King Manuel. They filled his ears with lies that Don Francisco had betrayed Portugal and convinced the young king to dispatch an armada led by Alfonso de Albuquerque to relieve my captain of the viceroyship. Don Francisco, however, was in no mood for politics. Tragedy struck off the coast of Chaul. In a heroic naval battle, my captain's beloved son Lorenzo was slain by Amir Hussein, admiral of the Mamluk fleet of Egypt. Though he deeply loved his son, Don Francisco did not shed tears for his death. In repayment, my captain vowed to shed blood. With his son's death avenged, Don Francisco surrendered the viceroyship of India and wrote his final chapter. He would not return to his beloved Portugal. Landing in southern Africa to collect water, his party was ambushed by the Khoikhoi natives. We found his body on that forsaken white beach. In the 5 years since we departed Lisbon, we followed Don Francisco to the edge of the earth. We fought ebony-skinned warriors in the jungles and savannas of Africa, battled Mamluk sailors on the decks of galleys heaving in the monsoon waves, and struggled against armies of elephants and camels in the sprawling cities of India. Our caravels had taken us to the distant shores unknown to our ancestors, and awoken Europe to a world beyond our dreams.
In the gloom, the longhouse feels empty, but it is filled with the odors of rust, tar, and animal fur, and the snoring of dogs. It is the man named Eric who speaks, smacking scarred fingers together for emphasis, the steam of his breath mingling with the wood smoke. He fills the men's heads with legends of exploration and raiding, of a sea that eats longbows, and an undiscovered country ripe for Viking occupation. He tells the Vikings that they can leave their frigid homeland and sail across the endless sea of worms to a new world brimming with wild grain, grapes, and tall trees. To the Vikings, he speaks of paradise, and of course the grizzled Norsemen are always eager for adventure. When he asks for volunteers, men slam their weapons on tables and shout his name in the cold air. Eric the Red smiles. Much of the Viking history is recorded in oral accounts called sagas, passed down through generations. Two of the most famous sagas are reserved for the adventures of Eric the Red and his men, who crossed the mighty sea in tiny ships to forge a new Viking sovereignty. Vinland, as the New World was called, was not kind to the Vikings. Although they lacked the iron weapons of the Norsemen, the native Skraeling were fierce warriors who fought relentlessly to defend their homeland against the Norse invaders. The vastness of the North Atlantic cut the Vikings in Newfoundland off from their homeland, and they suffered many long years while trying to establish their new colony.
Shouts of assent ring around the hall as the sons of Ragnar finish speaking, and ravens fly upwards, eager to bring good tidings to the Aesir. Moments later, the sky flashes with lightning and booms with thunder, signaling the approval of the gods. Days later, the mustering begins. Kings, jarls, warriors, and common folk alike gather, eager to seek vengeance on the Northumbrian king Ayla for the dishonorable slaying of Ragnar. Ivar, one of Ragnar's sons, has sworn to carve the blood eagle on Ayla in retribution. It is a sight to behold. Hundreds of longships bear crews of valiant Norsemen and enough supplies to last the army months. The Valkyries look on, for they will soon swell Odin's hall with brave warriors who fall in the coming battles. Ragnar's sons approach a small band of warriors with a dangerous but important quest: to scout the British Isles and establish a camp. When the army arrives, it will need a secure base from which to strike out against the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms that dominate the British mainland. Thor is pleased. The seas are benign and the winds favorable, allowing the longships a serene passage across the North Sea. As they near York, the seat of Northumbria, the sound of the sea mingles with the grinding of axes. Skalds eagerly prepare to craft the verses for a saga that will be passed down until the end of time. Favored by Odin and Thor, the Vikings watered the ground with the blood of their enemies, seizing vast amounts of plunder and fertile land. The stench of smoke and death filled the air as hapless victims foolishly turned to their altars instead of their swords. The haughty Anglo-Saxons met their match at the hands of ruthless Viking warriors, eager to earn their place at Odin's table. True to their word, Ragnar's sons carved the blood eagle into the back of the cowardly Ayla as a warning to any who might think of opposing them. Ragnar's sons settled the land that they had conquered, eventually establishing a state known as the Danelaw. For the next 2 centuries, Dane and Saxon would live as neighbors, sometimes at war, sometimes in peace, until the Saxon victory over the Norse at Stamford Bridge in 1066 foiled the last Viking invasion of England.
Mercenaries and Norman knights look dubiously at the ships that wobble in the black, fog-choked sea. What man is this Duke William to put so many horses on leaky transports? William ignores their questioning glances and stares across the channel in the direction of England. Edward the Confessor is dead, and now 3 men claim rulership of England. Harold the Saxon sits on the English throne, and even now hastens to fortify his shores against 2 invasions. Harald Hardrada, King of Denmark and Norway, sends Vikings from the north as William invades from the south. The outcome of this 3-way conflict is as murky as the fog that shrouds the English Channel. Harold the Saxon's housecarls are professional soldiers, not mercenaries. William's only chance is to use heavy cavalry. To do so, he must first get all of these horses onto these unreliable boats. The future of England is about to be decided. Harold the Saxon's housecarls looked certain to defend the crown for him as they fought the Vikings to a bloody stalemate at Stamford Bridge. Despite his losses, Harold marched his exhausted troops south to meet William the Conqueror near Hastings. William's archers and pikemen were no match for Harold the Saxon's veteran housecarls. Harold even broke the charge of William's knights. William himself went down in the fray, and as rumors of his death spread, the Normans turned to flee. William was not dead, however, and he rallied his troops by throwing aside his helmet so they could see his clean-shaven face and know he was alive. William and his armored knights rode down the housecarls, breaking the Saxon force, and continued their ride all the way to London. William was crowned king on Christmas Day. Because his reign eventually ushered England into a position of unprecedented world leadership, the year 1066 became established as the most famous day in English history. It is impossible to imagine the world ending on such a fine fall day. Yet the storm of Muslim horsemen continues to rage throughout Europe, leaving conquered cities and shattered armies stunned in its wake. The lightning-quick strikes of the Muslim horsemen break the city of Bordeaux and then Poitiers, leaving precious little of the Frankish kingdom to defend. Yet Charles Martel gathers the disheartened Frankish army for one last stand at the city of Tours. Arabic horses, bred for speed and beauty, begin to splash across the Vienne River. Martel's knights and swordsmen, trudging under the weight of iron mail, struggle to interpose themselves between the Muslims and the city of Tours. Carrion birds circle in the air, anticipating the savagery to come. The rest of Europe watches anxiously, for this is the climax of the Muslim invasion and the last stand of Christian Europe. The soul of the Frankish army was its knights, but Charles Martel knew that his cavalry, undisciplined, buried under the weight of weapons and armor, could not match the swiftness of the Muslim riders. Therefore, he ordered the knights to dismount and join ranks with the Frankish swordsmen, to form a tight shield wall. The Muslims had always conquered with swift offensiveness and were not equipped to counter the French defensive strategy. The arrows of the Muslim archers bounced harmlessly off the heavy Frankish armor, and the light Muslim cavalry could not breach the human chain. Battered and bleeding, the invaders broke ranks and fled back to the Pyrenees and the protection of Spain. From Charles Martel's Frankish kingdom eventually grew the Holy Roman Empire, making him the founding father of both Germany and France.